Mention the name Denis Healey and the picture of the rough, tough Labour Chancellor who was going to squeeze the rich until their pips squeaked comes to mind. What I didn't imagine as I drove through the grounds of their country house was a kind of rustic squire living on the downs of Sussex, at peace with nature and with himself. And his wife Edna, enjoying life away from the hurly-burly of Westminster. They're both in their mid-70s and life together has become a picture of domestic rural bliss.
Yes, exactly. Hello, dear.
Oh, hello. That's yours.
You remember Ross, don't you?
Hello, Ross, yes. How's it going?
Have a seat and some coffee.
thank you very much
Made by his own fair hands.
Ed?
Does he make the coffee?
Sometimes.
Yes. Ed?
Thank you.
Me?
Doesn't seem a very sort of Denis Healey thing to do to make the coffee.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. He makes a fair boiled egg.
Yes.
And no one else can make it. It's got to be
No,
done.
nobody else bothers to time an egg except me, and you have to have it exactly 5 minutes. Boiling water, yes, that's
There's
right.
certain things in life that one must never learn. One is how to mend a fuse, and the other is how to boil an egg when your husband's fussy.
How did you meet?
At Oxford. I was, for some reason, I was chairman of the Labour Club in
St Hugh's.
St Hugh's.
And I saw this red-cheeked girl there, very attractive, whom I called Tomato Face
I
at
thought
the
it was
time.
beetroot face. I know it
Yes,
wasn't
no,
me.
Tomato Face. And we first met there, but we didn't get married then because I knew I'd be going abroad and you don't know what's going to happen, you might get killed or something. So I lost 5 years marriage allowance, so delaying it till 1945. Otherwise, I'd have had a decent start in life.
What did you see in Denis?
Oh, this fantastic energy. I mean, it is quite an extraordinary... And also the multifaceted Healey. You know, he can talk about anything. He's a very stimulating companion, but also very funny, believe it or not. He can be extremely amusing as a companion. So, no, he took my fancy, as they say.
Well, after all these years, he clearly still does.
Oh, yes, yes. And early in the morning...
Which is how it should be. The house stands on its own above Alfriston, and if Denis were ever to get on Edna's nerves, perish the thought, there's always the garden to escape to with its glorious views of Sussex. It's also close to the sea and the towering white cliffs which form the Seven Sisters. You're a Yorkshire man, well, raised anyway. It's a bit of a transfer to the kind of mellow softness of the Sussex Downs.
Well, to be honest, one reason we chose this house, and I was so keen on the area, is that the downs here are more like the Yorkshire Dales. There's as much tawny grass and heather.
And the same wide sky.
And the same wide sky. It reminded me very much of the Dales, which I'm bound to say is still my favourite area. But of course, in politics and even retired when you're busy, you find you have to live near London.
You were saying that at one point, Edna, that a century ago, that this was regarded as very barren and very bleak countryside.
Oh yes, anyone writing about this area in the 18th century considered, well, not only bleak, but very dangerous. There were smugglers down here and highwaymen across here, and all very open. And the wind...
There still are. For Denis, one of the joys of retiring to the country is to be able to devote himself to one of his great passions, English literature. And Virginia Woolf, strangely, is his favourite writer.
No, Leonard and Virginia Woolf lived in a house near Lewes, and when the lease ran out, they looked for another one, and they got hold of this in 1919 for £700, and they lived here for the rest of their lives.
Monk's house is in Rodmell, a village just 10 minutes away from the Healeys' own home. For Denis, this was quite a discovery.
No, I've always loved Virginia Woolf. I wrote a college essay prize about To the Lighthouse when I was at school. And I knew Leonard, who's here, her husband, after the war when he was on the, he was chairman actually of the Labour Party's International Committee, and I was a member as a young man at transport house. And this, you see, is the hut where she wrote for 22 years most of her masterpieces, looking across the valley here.
It's a very pleasant situation, yet one day she walked out and never came back.
Well, poor Virginia, was subject to attacks of really madness, and she was terribly upset when her favourite nephew, Julian Bell, the brother of Quentin Bell, was killed driving an ambulance in China just before the war. And then the war itself hit her very hard. There were planes zooming over the hills and dropping bombs all round. And her husband, Leonard, came home one afternoon and found a letter from Virginia on the mantelpiece saying that she'd decided to end it all. And she walked down over the fields to the swollen River Ouse and drowned herself.
Death and life are part of nature's cycle, though Denis's views on fox hunting are very different from Captain Loder's.
I wouldn't legislate against it. On the other hand, being directly involved with the National Trust, I'm against the National Trust allowing hunting on its land in order that the unspeakable can pursue the uneatable, as Oscar Wilde described fox hunting. When you throw a fox alive to a pack of hounds so that they can tear it to pieces, and I've seen this on our television screens, I find that a most disagreeable sight. And painting a little child's forehead with blood from the brush which has been cut off a fox, I find a barbaric custom.
Shooting?
I don't find shooting particularly objectionable as long as people are shooting things either for food or to protect other animals as they shoot foxes. I'm not against shooting foxes.
12th century churches, ancient graveyards, and the way early man changed this once densely forested area are more Denis's line of country.
I think so, although I think prehistoric man cleared a lot of it away and buried his dead in these barrows or burial mounds, which later were used like this for churches, and Berwick Church is built on a prehistoric burial mound.
Really? It's an amazing amount of light. I don't think I've ever been into a church where the windows were without stained glass and you could see out and the light can come in.
Well, I think that's the secret of this church, that the windows were all blown out by bombs during the last World War, and the Bishop of Chichester, who is pictured up there, decided that it wouldn't be sensible to replace the windows because the war was still on, but it would be better to get some modern artists to paint the walls. In the old days, the walls in Sussex were nearly all painted, and so he suggested they should be painted by Virginia Woolf's sister, Vanessa, who was living near here at Charleston with her husband, Clive Bell, and her lover, Duncan Grant. And so they all sat together and did these wonderful paintings here. There was a terrible row because a lot of the parishioners didn't want the church painted, and it took about 2 years. The decision by the bishop was taken just after Virginia Woolf drowned herself, as we saw, in the River Ouse at Rodmell. So in a sense, this is, I feel it's a memorial as much to her.
If Denis is clearly fascinated by Virginia Woolf and the Bloomsbury set, Edna isn't.
The Bloomsburys were so self-indulgent, so looking at themselves all the time, that I find them a bit tiresome between you and me.
I mean, it seemed an unlikely choice of literary heroes for rough, tough Denis Healey.
Well, don't be misled by that rough, tough Denis Healey. He's an extraordinarily sensitive man. I mean, we went to see Medea the other night, and even before the horror had started, his shoulders were shaking, so I was getting ready to pass him a handkerchief. And I mean, he wept 2 or 3 times during the performance.
Are you a religious man yourself?
I would say I'm religious but not Christian. I don't believe in a personal God. I believe in the life and world of the spirit. So I suppose I have more in common with Hinduism and some of the Oriental religions. But the basic thing is I don't think it's possible to describe things of the spirit with the same sort of language as you use to describe the microwave or the atomic bomb. And you can approach it very much better through painting and poetry, and above all music, than you can through theology, which I think is a con.
You see, what he is the classic mixture that the Brontes had too. He's an Irishman, or rather of Irish descent, brought up in Yorkshire. And this is a pretty potent mixture.
What do you miss most about retirement?
I don't really miss the old life at all. I mean, I feel I've adjusted to being older. And when you get older, you take a more relaxed view, I think, of things. But the real tragedy about getting old is that three things happen. First of all, you start losing your memory. And I've forgotten the other two things.
The most popular